E, bom, abrimos já a ronda para as perguntas y comentarios, ¿no? También para ganar tiempo, como mencioné, si tienen algo escrito puede agilizar, pero bueno, ya tiene la palabra, por favor.
Bom dia a todos. Eu gostei muito das apresentações. Meu nome é Alessandra.
Good morning. My name is Alessandra. I really liked the presentations, and I've been working at ISAGS. I joined them a while ago. My question goes to Dr. Iman, and it also goes to Dr. Dessau. I've worked with the Biosafety Committee for Technical Standards, and within that perspective, it's very common for the companies and the scientists to have alliances and interests in common. Many companies also fund the research of the universities of these scientists. I would like Dr. Irman to speak about how he sees the risks associated to this association between companies and scientists. That was something that was mentioned in 1922 with Fritz Lang's Metropolis. And where are we going? How to guarantee biosafety and biosurveillance in a scenario of economic interests that excludes Anvisa and Ibama from the decision-making process? Well, we'll take
2 or 3 more questions
and then we'll start answering them.
Gracias, buen día.
Thank you. Good morning. Regarding to Dr. Velasquez, regarding intellectual property and patents, it is clear that the patent standards are very low in our countries, especially in the Andean community. If we see the data from Brazil and Argentina, in Ecuador, they are very low indeed, because I know what happens in the PTO in Ecuador. And we are in a process of reformulation, but the patentability are very low. And of course, we patent anything, any stuff. So as a country, for example, small countries will have an extreme difficulty to generate reforms. It is fundamental in spaces, as soon as rural CELAC, we have to have the possibility to create a strong fora on intellectual property in order to negotiate properly. Let's recall that the Andean community took some decisions that were very dangerous, but in countries like Ecuador, we also committed errors in making decisions on patentability before time and with normative plus. But the debate cannot be, or we cannot do it alone by ourselves. What are the proposals we have worked with Center? Which are the proposals we may have from this space, with a space like this one, because there are very complicated topics to be discussed? Which are the proposals to work as ISACS and UNASUR in the terms of patents of medicines, in order to have just a common position as a region and to impose other fora and not commit errors anymore, and to use the regulation capacity of the state and try to patent good things and not bad stuff. Another question, Thomas, if you wish. Yes, I will make a question. I said I will be providing a response because I have a group of universal access of medicines of UNASUR, and in the agenda we have intellectual property, and we are working on a joint position, and we're agent in the area of health, but also in other organizations. In the declaration of this level of non-communicable disease, there was a paragraph on medicines and intellectual property, and as a region we also intervened in New York, and we are working on that. And part of this comes from sharing initiative, projects, databases, patents, and so on. There is an important issue to be shared with you, and I am interested in seeing how the previous permit is working here in Brazil. German was showing 290 patents in Brazil and 950 in the Argentine. I would like to know is it good? Is it better? Why is it that are there not new patents? I don't think that in Argentina we have less requirements than in Brazil, or less proposals. This could be of the previous permit, that I think that the quantities requested are the same as minimum. I think that Brazil could be more, for example.
Puede ser por la anuencia previa que esté pasando esto.
And also to comment, in our country, in the Argentine, we recently, last year, we had a joint resolution with the Ministry of Industry and Health and the Institute of Industrial Property in the Argentine, the INDI, where we approved some patentability guidelines. On these patentability guidelines, they were working on the space that countries have to have policies in the area of patents, patent policy, as policy as far similar to security, also to think that this is useful when products are accessible to the public. I have to bear in mind that the quality and efficiency of the product and the demands that I have, the requirements have to be that they are not become a barrier for access to medicines. And, we are working on that from the government. With the patents, it's exactly the same. I may patent, but I have to take into consideration that this might become a barrier to the access of medicines. So these guidelines are limiting or promoting, if you wish, to be more strict in the review of polymorphs, markers, and so on. Therefore, I spoke a lot because I want to provide an answer, because there are other spaces that you all know. Well, that was all. Thank you very much. Maria, the last question, and then we have give the floor to the panelists. Voy a hablar en inglés.
Déjame preguntarle en español entonces. Los dos
Spanish again. These sectors. Thank you very much for your excellent presentations. Doctor knows that we are in Canada. Some weeks we were in Canada where we discussed biosimilarities or medicines, biological medicines, and it was presented by the WHO a very strong case on how to regulate, both in REPARF as in the qualification Health Canada by Health Canada afterwards. Dr. Velasquez showed how this kind of medicines can create significant reduction of morbidity and mortality, but you said that they may be causing an expense or represent a very high cost, and the biological medicines of a similar action or similar efficiency may be representing a very important gain for our region. In Suriname, they are proposing now 15 women to save 15 women, and we have to, the cost is 10% of what we spend per year. So I would like to know, because Thomas mentioned the effort of GAUMO within the UNASUR, and where we have some political positions or attitudes or within Mercosur or UNASUR or whatever regulation agencies, perhaps jointly with the PAHO, they are already taking or assuming a position which is more technical, if you wish, facilitating the use of these medicines, biomedicines, that may be improving the situation, the health situation of our populations very significantly. But it is very, very expensive. This is the discussion that is taking place, more technical, within the UNASUR country. Thank you. Thank you, Miriam. I would suggest Dr. Dirceu to make a small presentation of the mechanism in ANVISA of the previous meeting or previous permit, and then we will be hearing Dr. Herman's question.
A lei de patentes vigente no Brasil.
The law of patents in force in Brazil dates back to 1996, or before 1996, Brazil would not recognize the patents of drugs and medicines. It was a moment of great external pressure for us to start recognizing patents, and there was the approval of a law in Brazil that was one of the most advanced back then, globally speaking. The pipeline was absorbed, and no period of adaptation of the Brazilian market was given, and very quickly the same government that gave in to external pressures and approved the law perceived that expenditures with medicines had increased by almost fourfold in almost 3 years. And then there was an amendment made to the law, including a simple article saying that the patents of drugs and medicines in Brazil, in order to be granted, need a prior assessment made by ANVISA. Between 2001 and 2011, we lived in a scenario where the Office of Patents, INPI, would previously assess the patents, and only those that would be granted were sent to ANVISA for their previous assessment. And that led to great conflicts because it was a previous assessment made afterwards. And when ANVISA's opinion was different from that of INPI, then the process would be decided at the courts. The truth is that out of 1,600 patents that INPI submitted to ANVISA during this period, ANVISA did not recognize something in the range of 170 patents, and none of them became non-granting of the patent because of all of the processes were taken to the court. And in 2011, the situation became a little more complex because the General Court in Brazil issued an opinion saying that ANVISA could not assess requirements for patentability, and that it should instead focus on the safety aspects of products to be patented. Back then, I became ANVISA's president along at the same time that this opinion was published, and we at the government thought that we should solve this question within the government because we have a modern patent granting system due to the fact that ANVISA needs to participate and that we should not miss the opportunity. We then and today, the concept that Anvisa has the role of looking for a balance between the patent and the rights of those who developed or discovered the product and the health needs of the country. We disregarded the perspective that Anvisa, or the request for Anvisa not to analyze the patent requests, because in the patent process there is no information about the safety and security and efficacy of the products. And today we are being faced with the following situation. Whenever a patent request is submitted to INPI, these processes are submitted to Anvisa without INPI analysis. Anvisa analyzes them according to a resolution that was published in 2013, where we define that we analyze patent requests for drugs or medicines that generate some type of health interest. And we define two situations where there is health interest. One, when the process or product is similar to something that has already been banished or prohibited due to safety-related aspects. Whenever a patent request is submitted to Anvisa, we then assess it as to whether there is sanitary interest related to that process. Another criterion is for products that are considered strategic for Brazil and that are included in an ordinance by the Minister of Health. So whenever a process is submitted, we analyze whether it fits into one of these two groups. If the answer is yes, we then carry on with the in-depth analysis of the patent requests from a sanitary perspective. If they do not fit in, then they are sent for INPI to assess. And there's a clear example that I always mentioned. For instance, if somebody wants to patent an antipyretic, will not spend time on deciding whether a monopoly will be created around this type of drug or not, despite the fact that yesterday we heard the news that acetaminophen has been responsible for the deaths of many Americans. And we then analyze in depth those products that are related to the treatment of cancer or AIDS, and products for the treatment of diabetes and diseases that are important from a health perspective. These actions, these combined actions between Anvisa and INPI apparently led to greater juridical stability. And now we are discussing other aspects. For one, do they fit or do they not fit the sanitary interest aspects? And after that, it's easier for Anvisa to justify its participation in this process with this focus. It is a sanitary balance within this set of interests. And this is the system that we're working on right now. And I think that for ISACs and for UNASUR, this perspective of involving the health authority, be it the authority that regulates drugs or the Ministry of Health itself, in the process of granting patents is a good thing, but it does lead to some reactions. In Brazil, what we see is that if you do not like something, you say that it's illegal. So people used to say that law is illegal, even though the law says that Anvisa should perform a previous assessment. People used to say that, well, Anvisa can't do that because Anvisa was not created to voice an opinion about patents. But the same National Congress that created the INPI and Anvisa has given that responsibility to Anvisa. And now, since people cannot say that that is illegal. People are saying that law is unconstitutional. And people have been questioning the law that created Anvisa itself, saying that the National Congress could not or did not have the right to transfer the responsibility to interfere on patents and to ban cigarettes with additives or drugs that are harmful for the health to Anvisa. Only the parliament could do that, and this is being discussed by the Supreme Court in Brazil.
So there's a lot of controversy about that, but so far we haven't been able to say that Brazil, regardless of all the pressures, does not meet the triple agreement due to the previous improvement. We understand that the previous improvement is one of the safety possibilities that Brazil has, even if it is a signatory of the triple agreement, to do that. I think that's basically what I had to say, right? Okay, great.
Thank you very much. It's very clear, really. Your comment is very clear, and the response to the question. Germany, if you wish to, in 10 minutes or less, he said. The first question, Alejandro, if I understood, she referred very diplomatically, asking to follow the partnership and common interest. Very diplomatic, because I wouldn't call it like that. But the French pharmacologist, in an interview which I mentioned to a weekly magazine, that the pharmaceutical industry is terrible. It's very grieved that is coming to all the international and national departments. And when I say international, including the WHO, this is not a secret, of course, because of the management of pandemic H1N1, those who decided that had to be vaccinated in the north was the expert of the pharmaceutical industry, which then manufactured the vaccines. So Margaret Chandler, I told this to Margaret Chandler, that the industry is in every single community, like an octopus. This has to be with. So there is an infiltration, a lot of scandal in the French government about this, on medicine that was withdrawn from the market after being marketed and sold during 10 years of a family laboratory, Laboratory Servier, that they use medicines for diet with deaths for 10 years, and it was discovered that they hadn't withdrawn from the market because this laboratory had this availability to the Ministry of France, 2 people for the regulating agency that were in charge of this. The same in all the agencies. If we go to the European Union, the European Agency of Drugs, some months ago there was a scandal that the director of the European Medicine Agency, during 5 or 6 years, he had a private consultant agency that was providing consultancy to the industry that were requiring the registration of medicine. This is a very serious problem. There are some areas which are infiltrated in all the areas. I don't know the situation in Brazil, but I don't see why in Brazil has to be an exception to this kind of influences that we see everywhere. Our colleague from Ecuador says that the standards of patentability, regrettably, in all the region and in other parts of the world are very, very, very low.
In providing patents to anything, and there's something of the essence. WHO has done very well with Carlos Correa. We were able to, at least to 40 countries, we provided capacity building to the examiners of the National Patents Office in 40 countries. And I think you must know that Ecuador is reviewing intellectual property legislation. The South Center has been implied in this review, and our recommendation is that the criteria of patentability should be reinforced, inspired on the experience of India, a very famous case that ended on April the 1st after a 7 years litigation from Novartis against the Supreme Court. It has been said that actually Novartis litigated for 7 years is not patentable. And it has confirmed the patent legislation of India that has very strong patentability criteria. That is what he said is consistent with TRIPS agreement, and the legislations in India has been approved, and since then. Actually, as we saw, there were no panel to the WTO with the previous approval. No country challenged this new level or platform. You questioned you asked me what ISACS is planning to do. I think it's a good head start that the South Center should be. I thank once again for inviting us. We'll keep on doing these trainings to the patents offices, and I see feasible that in the future ISACS and South Center could work together in this line to provide education, capacity building, and support in the specific effort to actors that until recently everybody thought that what an patent examiner has to do from a national patents office with public health. What happens that these are important players in this business. I end up my comments here because Tomás' presentation actually was more a comment than a formal presentation. Thank you. Final words. We now close this session. I want to thank our presenters. These presentations were excellently made, served for many purposes, and we just scratched the surface and we try to find other spaces